exceptional founders, humans, and honestly, like sometimes I look at these people and I'm like, "You're not human." Manny was a machine. Manny is an absolute machine. I think you need that in order to be the best of the best. You need to be cranking. You need to be singular minded. This is the only thing I think about all day, every day, basically. And I think that's definitely a commonality between. You can have a great surfer and a great board, which is like founder and product. But if you don't have a wave, you can't go anywhere. We want to invest in spaces that have tailwinds, where even if we don't have the right founder, or even if it takes them a little while, or they mess up on something, the space just pulls you forward no matter what.
All right, we're back again. Another episode of Understory Unfiltered. Very, very cool guest today. Somebody who's been making a lot of noise in the tech world for quite some time now. Has his own fund these days and has really scaled the thing up very impressively, very fast in a way that is extremely unique. But we have Max Altschuler from GTM Fund. So Max, great to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I would love if you could tell everyone in your own words what GTM Fund is, how you got started, and kind of the thesis of what you're doing with GTM Fund as a whole versus traditional venture.
Definitely. So GTM Fund is an early stage fund focused on B2B SaaS in AI. Our unique differentiator is that we have about 300 go-to-market leaders as investors and LPs in the fund. And we've got this beautiful flywheel of fund, community of these GTM operators, and then the media entity, which was my old company, Sales Hacker. We bought back from Outreach, which I'll get into, I guess, later on in this episode. But rebranded it, reinvigorated it, relaunched it under GTM Now. And so we've kind of got this amazing flywheel. We're able to put these GTM leaders, experienced executives on a pedestal, on the media entity, drive traffic and eyeballs to the fund from there. And then we get our deal flow from our GTM leaders, but also from inbound on the media side of things. And then we invest out of a $54 million fund, which is our fund two. Fund one was 22 million, and then we've done some SPVs along the way as well. Um, it's super interesting. Every one of our LPs acts as a node for deal flow, diligence, and portfolio company support, whether that means candidate placement, customer introductions, or overall GTM advice. And I think the cool thing about it is that a lot of these folks who've been there, done that, and have made it and seen kind of zero to IPO really want to give back. Find it, as part of their mission to, support the portfolio companies. We've got a Slack channel, an enterprise edition of Slack that houses our community, and I'd say, over 90% of our LPs are participating in that, and so we're able to act as a switchboard operator for our GTM leader LPs and our portfolio companies. We've actually built our own internal GPT called XVAL, stands for exponential value. And when you put that on top of that flywheel, we're able to kind of ingest all of the information on our LPs, the LP preference card, which they fill out when they join as an LP, and then also the information from the portfolio companies and kind of the needs and asks that they have. And, really truly act as that switchboard operator that allows us to connect the right LPs to the right portfolio companies at the right time, without too much lift or elbow grease from us, so that it's like an infinitely scalable model, which goes back to our own operator background.
How many of your LPs, and I'm skipping around here, but how many of your LPs are actually portfolio companies for you guys as well? Like work at portfolio companies, CMOs, CROs, whatever it is at your portfolio companies.
I don't think we've ever invested in an LP's company. If they are an LP, it's because they either became an LP after, way after typically, or um, for the most part, we've placed them at the portfolio company after we made their investment. Actually, don't even know. Yeah, okay. So a couple of
Got
them
it.
have been
Okay.
later, but we've placed probably 70 plus candidates at our portfolio companies, and of that, maybe 15, 20 of them have been LPs.
Okay. Very cool. So I want to talk about the origin story here and how you got into this in the first place, and honestly, how you broke into tech. So talk about that. I know you're at Udemy, so talk about the story there and how that all got started and how that eventually transitioned into Sales Hacker, which seems like it was kind of the catalyst for a lot of this.
Yeah, I was a very C's get degrees type student. For me, what was certainly not the prototypical, Stanford grad getting a tech type person. Went to Arizona State, um, started two companies in and right out of college. Both kind of failed up, meaning we learned a lot from them. Second one was profitable. Certainly could have kept running it. Just wasn't this big shot that we wanted to take, and couldn't figure out what like the breakthrough was going to be. So decided to shut it down and go get jobs in the startup world. And in 2011, it was not a sexy thing to do. It wasn't even a safe thing to do like it is today. Oh yeah, you get fired from one startup, you go get a job at another startup. Like back then, there were not a lot of startups in existence, and even the ones that were very very risky. Udemy at the time had just raised $1 million seed round. I was the eighth employee at the company, and I was tasked with building the supply, the instructor side of that business. And we did some really hacky things to grow very quickly. I really, wanted to get in somewhere where I could see how the sausage was made on a successful company. For me, the leadership team was very important, and then, the mission had to be massive. I think, disrupting the $2 trillion education space that I felt like I was failed by was a great mission to get behind. And then Aaron Bali and team, phenomenal entrepreneur and just folks to work with. Everybody was, I think, somebody that I can learn something from. So uh, grew really quickly. Did some really hacky stuff. We used virtual assistants in the Philippines that were traditionally used as like uh, admins or executive assistants and turned them into SDRs. We built a repository of if-then statements and had them essentially use one of the first sales engagement platforms called ToutApp to go and build out what like would later become Outreach, like automating outbound sales. We scraped all sorts of sites for best-selling authors to get them to create classes on and videos on Outreach. So used Phantom JS and Python to go build out those leads lists in a very efficient manner. And other VCs and founders would ask our VCs and founders what we were doing to grow so quickly, and they'd put them in touch with me, and I would talk to these companies, and that led to the start of Sales Hacker, which ended up being a private meetup where we focused on what are the like really unique hacky things we can do to grow sales. It was kind of like GTM engineering that you're seeing today with Clay and some of these new companies, but we just we did this in 2012, 2011, 12, 13. So in 2012, we kind of did the private meetups. Um, that led to 2013 where we did our first ever conference. I decided, hey, this is pretty interesting. There's money here. People need this. Let's go full time on it. See what we could build. Ended up running the SaaStr annual for Jason Lemkin for the first 2 years. That existed because he was a speaker at one of my first events and said, "Hey, I've got this Quora thing that I'm building. I got an audience, but I don't know how to do the conference stuff. Can you do it for me?" And so we did that for the first 2 years for him, which was great because we used some of the revenue from that to grow faster on the sales hacker side of things. Built the community to 150,000 members. I think one of the breakthrough hires I made there was Gaetano Denardi, who had an SEO background, and we really doubled down on
Oh
web
yeah.
optimization and digital media. Hired Scott Barker, who came in and led partnerships for us, and ended up moving over to Outreach with me, and was a partner of mine for 7.5 years. Actually, came over to the fund as well. So I think we did a really good job of hiring, and one of my kind of core philosophies on that was like, just give me your best year or two, and I'll put you on a path that you wouldn't have been on previously. And so, I think that was true for a lot of the people that we hired. They came to us making, X, and they left us making X times two or X times three in only, a year or two of working with Sales Hacker. And they put in great work and they cut their teeth. And I hope they learned a ton doing it. I think they did. But, what we were able to give them was, visibility and a network with the work that we're doing. When if you're someone like Gaetano and you go to a SaaS company, unless that SaaS company is like the best, hypiest SaaS company, you don't really get that same visibility versus working with a publication like Sales Hacker where you're consistently working with a bunch of revenue leaders. And then, when it is time to go and
Mm.
work for a SaaS company, you're just a pick of the litter of companies you can go and work for because now everybody in that space knows you. But that only comes if, you crush it and you do great work, and they did. Built an amazing, multi-million dollar company with Sales Hacker, but ultimately, um, decided to sell it in 2018, saw the writing on the wall on a couple things, and, it's time for the next chapter.
So that's how the outreach story actually began, right? It's like you sold Sales Hacker to Outreach, and then you became, what was the actual title? VP of Marketing at
Yeah,
Outreach?
so my first I started angel investing when I was doing Sales Hacker. I had a great cash flowing business, but not a high upside business. Meaning, with SaaS company, you can sell it for like 20x revenue multiple. For an events company,
Crazy multiples.
you're getting like 1x. You're getting 1x book on consulting, training, events, things like that. So, my way of diversifying into that multiple was by taking a lot of the profits from the business, and putting them into angel investments. And my first check ever was into Outreach at a $3 million valuation, 2015. Manny had just pivoted the company from group talent to Outreach. And coincidentally, in 2018, they ended up acquiring Sales Hacker. The story on the acquisition was really, we're an events company. First and foremost, that's where most of our money came from. We saw the writing on the wall. It was one of these things that happened where, like, in 2013, when we started, there wasn't a lot of competition in sales events. By 2017, all of these companies started raising so much money that, in previous years, you had to have like a pretty big company and pretty good density of customers to do a customer conference. And then in 2017, because you raised so much money, you were doing customer conferences a lot earlier. So not only were we competing with, other sales conferences, but all of a sudden there was like a customer conference for every sales company, every other week in the prime seasons. And so, like, if we went to go do a conference in March, it was like, oh, okay, well, you can go to Sales Loft's conference or Drift's conference or Gong's conference or Showpad's conference or, High Spots or Seismic's conference also. And then we were competing with budget, we're competing with eyeballs, we're competing all those things. At the same time, because we were a media company, we had to throw profitable conferences. Whereas a Sales Loft or a Seismic or any of these companies can lose $500,000 or $1 million on a conference because it's marketing budget. And so, how are you going to compete when you need to be profitable, but you're competing with a vendor who can get Shaquille O'Neal to do the keynote, serve sushi for lunch, and have Beyonce do the after party? Just it wasn't papering out. So we pivoted the business to do mostly online, digital, virtual events. What it did was it actually preserved a lot of the revenue but cut our costs considerably. And that was working well for a while. And then, at a certain point, it's like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Like, we're banging our heads against the wall on where this is going to scale to. And we were like too early on the community train because like Pavilion started maybe like a little bit later than that, um, and couldn't really unlock like online training, that type of stuff. So made a list of all the potential acquirers, and I had it bucketed out by um, SaaS vendors where we can kind of power their marketing arm, other media entities, consulting, training, advisory firms, etc. And started having conversations with them all. And I had some really deep conversations with some companies, and Outreach ended up being the one that was a great offer and felt the most comfortable with, and a great opportunity. And I think they could, they had the best in class product, but they were lacking on the marketing side. And I think that was a good opportunity for us. And so we came in and plugged in, our marketing muscle and media muscle, and Outreach ripped in revenue. We went from a $515 million valuation to a $4.4 billion valuation in, I think, under 3 years.
Plus, you had initially invested at that $3 million valuation, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I was in a very good place. And at this point in my life in 2025, I'm fully out. I've done secondaries all along the way. So uh, I'm a happy camper. and it did very well for me.
Yeah, it
But
sounds like you hit the jackpot on that one.
yeah, it was a good move. It was a good move, certainly, and a good acquisition. And it was mostly stock deal, so I was able to take advantage of kind of the increase in value over the years. Um, but I was very methodical about it, and made this decision carefully, and it was the right decision. So, no regrets there. And it's funny, now 2 years ago we got the opportunity to buy it back. When we left Outreach. Um, I think the soul of Sales Hacker left with it, and so they recognized that, and we were able to get it back for pennies on the dollar. Uh,
So to be clear, it all came full circle, and now you own Sales Hacker again.
yep, yep. They
Yeah, it's a
borrowed. They
wild
basically
story.
borrowed it for 4 years, five
And
years.
they borrowed it. They paid you to borrow it. Good deal for Max. Good deal for everyone involved in Sales Hacker. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was a
Max,
good deal
just
for
one
Outreach
question
too.
about that, like on the growth of Sales Hacker, just so I'm clear. What was the biggest like channel for you in terms of member acquisition? Was it those events, or were you doing something else? Was it a combination of everything? I'm just really curious to get to 150K um, community members is pretty impressive. So I'm just curious about the acquisition there.
Webinars, virtual events, and SEO. Probably a mix of those four things. And then my LinkedIn at the time, in like 2016, 2017. If you were really good at LinkedIn, you could drive a ton of registrations. The way that the newsfeed was set up, worked in our favor. And I ended up publishing. It was helpful that I published Hacking Sales, my first book, self-published, and then sold the rights to Wiley. Then published Career Hacking, and then wrote a book while I was at Outreach called Sales Engagement. But Hacking Sales probably helped the most also on that side of things because I did have now a published book by Wiley, which is like they do all the business books, so you kind of get a ton of credibility out of that. We also had a big partnership with Salesforce there, I think in like 2016, 17, that lent us a significant amount of credibility as well.
The irony of joining Outreach as a VP of marketing after starting a sales community is pretty funny, obviously. But also just the LinkedIn algorithm, like you were saying, like the whole Chris Walker approach. He was also hosting those webinars and getting a ton of registrations. So, and the early days of LinkedIn is super interesting. But that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the fit made a lot of sense in terms of the Sales Hacker Outreach acquisition. When I sat down with Manny at his conference, this was the 2018 Unleash conference, which is Outreach's annual conference. And I sat down with Manny and I said, "Hey, congrats on the $515 million valuation, $65 million Series D, whatever the number was. Um, you know, what keeps you up at night?" And he said, "Marketing." And I said, "Well, we've got a media company that markets to salespeople, and I know how to market to sales. I know the space, know you well. You've got best in class product, and now you've got enough, to afford us basically, but stock and cash. Let's make this thing happen." And um, ended up spending time with him, his COO, CRO, and a bunch of the team there at that event. Then over the coming weeks, and pulled the thing together. Really, it was like 4 weeks of negotiation and 2 months of just legal buttoning up stuff. But I was working there. That was May. By June, I was flying out to Seattle and getting started. Um, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. I was learning so much on the fly, but I would have had it no other way. Those are kind of the best moments of your career when you're just like thrown into the fire and you got to figure it out. And I've always thrived in those environments. Like I learned by doing, and that was special. We had a great team around us.
I really resonate with what you just said. I was also very much a C's get degrees type of guy for the majority of my life. And I feel like I learned more in the last 3 years running Understory with Ali than I had in however many years I had a formal education. It's not even close. And I think that's becoming more and more acceptable in society today, but it's nice to hear it from somebody who's actually done it and accomplished a lot and is in a great place in life and at a pretty young age too. So yeah, it's cool. I like that. So let's pivot a little bit more into GTM Fund. So I want to talk about this more because this is obviously what you're doing currently. I mean, there's a few different things you're doing currently. We'll talk about operator too. But with GTM Fund, you mentioned a lot at the very beginning of this call. So you're working with operators and you're having them become the LPs and you're using that kind of as a moat for investments. So I'm curious also about this piece in particular. But given the fact that you went on a very, very strict route to find a few different acquisition partners that you wanted for Sales Hacker, and you got used to and acquainted with the idea of, at that point, it's not raising capital, but it's kind of raising capital. So how easy was the pivot from doing that, spending those years at Outreach, I guess it's 4 years, right? And then going back into raising capital? How was that? And especially raising capital from people that, you know, are probably pretty successful, but slightly different from the traditional path that people go down for raising capital.
Well, I started the fund while I was still working at Outreach, and I got the blessing, obviously, the CEO, CRO, and CFO. And so it was accretive to Outreach. Any way that I could build relationships with other CROs and CMOs was accretive to the work that we were doing at Outreach. And so, I wasn't going to be there forever. My goal was to be there through IPO, which, would have been in 2022, but didn't end up materializing because of the state of the markets. So I started the fund in 2021. AngelList came out with rolling funds, which democratized venture capital, allowed anybody to kind of raise and deploy capital as long as you could raise and deploy capital. And I was able to pull this idea out of my back pocket to start GTM Fund. Essentially, like when I was running Sales Hacker, uh, and I was in angel investing, other CROs would come to me and say, "Hey, Max, like I see you're diversifying. I want to diversify too." If you had two CROs or two heads of sales from Salesforce in 2012, and one went to go be the CRO of Zoom, and the other one went to go be the CRO of Achievers, 4 years later, the CRO of Zoom makes 50 million in IPO, the other one makes zero in like a PE buyout that didn't mark up their equity. And it could be no fault of either of the CROs. They picked the wrong opportunity, the right opportunity. And all of their eggs are in one basket. All their equity is in one basket for 4 years. But they make, good cash. So they want to be able to angel invest. And they said, can I just give you money and you can put it into the same companies? And I said, well, I don't have the time to do that, or, the infrastructure, the admin, and all that. So I was able to pull that idea in my back pocket with rolling funds and start GTM Fund. And that was the kind of impetus for it all. I said, well, what if I raised $1 million from 20 to 50 of my GTM leader friends, put it into 10 companies, and we could positively affect the outcome of those companies by supporting them with all things go to market. And it went gangbusters. We ended up raising 250 million from, sorry, 22 million from 250 GTM leaders, and in Fund One, and then Fund Two, 54 million from around 300 GTM leaders plus institutions, and yeah, it's been cool. We put together an incredible team with Scott Barker was with us for the first couple of years. Paul Irving joined us from Royal Bank of Canada. We've got a team of 4 in Vancouver, and we've got one in New York, and then I'm kind of floating, San Francisco mostly, and back and forth to New York. And I've taken a ton that I've learned from along the way. So, for us, it's really about building a scalable infrastructure to be able to support these companies. A lot of that comes from my operator background, building XVal and some of the other things I talked about before. It's not enough to just have a community of GTM leaders. You also have to be able to operationalize that. And so we've been able to do that in a scalable manner. I think the second thing is knowing, what content to focus on and what topics to focus on with our portfolio companies and how we can actually help them. I think it's, when you're running a successful fund, you've got to do 3 things well. You've got to invest. I'd say 4 things. Maybe invest and support portfolio companies, raise money, and then also build a brand and a firm that people want to be a part of, that people want to raise money from. I think by starting small and being a strategic check on people's cap tables and now moving to more of a co-lead and lead, we've been able to build our brand alongside of tier 1 VC firms and get in deals with some of these, big brand names. So I think we made a lot of the right moves. We've got a great, I think we're top quartile for Fund 1 and top decile for Fund 2. We were able to incubate a company called Operator out of this fund. We'd like to incubate more companies. We're learning a ton from that incubation about kind of what makes a great operator turn founder, what makes a great opportunity, how much money they need to get going, how much input and uh, support should we be providing, at every turn. So um, for me, it's all about the lifelong learning.
Yeah, fair enough. And I also think you deserve some credit here. So I've been following you on LinkedIn for probably, I don't know, 5, 6 years maybe. It's been a while, to be honest. I was a sales rep when I started following you on LinkedIn. And I learned a lot from your content. You still do post a lot of content. You get great engagement on there. But I think you've also started a trend. So there was a company, and I'm not going to drop the name of this company, but there was a company that Ali and I were both approached to be angels for, and they're taking a very similar kind of path that you guys take, but it's strictly geared towards content creators. So this is really interesting, and I kind of want to get your take on this. And what they're doing basically is they came after the two of us, a few of our competitors, some more of our friends. People are just in the space making a lot of content, making a lot of noise, and building very successful businesses on the back of it. And they basically wanted to do is create an army of content creators that are also operators for agencies, CROs, CMOs, those types of titles. And they're trying to basically build an army of content creators that can create this initial spike and this initial boom to get their initial user base and then scale from there. But I feel like you kind of started that trend, but I'm curious to get your take on that. If you're seeing an increase of it, if you feel similarly, and what you think about that play in general.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we were the ones who started necessarily an operator led model for these types of things. I mean, there was Operator Collective and a few others that existed previously that had kind of leaned on operators as being a part of. Sempervirens is another one in like the people ops world. Um, I don't really care much for being first. That doesn't matter much to me. I just want to be best, and best in our vertical. I mean, I think there are certainly funds we'll work with that don't do what we do. That also have community models that's great. It's like if we're going to do a deal with another fund that does a product specific, or they've got a bunch of LPs that are product folks, fantastic. If we're going to do a deal with a fund that does that for people ops and it's an investment in the people ops space, wonderful. Um, so I don't think we were first there, but I do care about being best. I care about being able to scale and operationalize, our process in a very meaningful way where our LPs feel like they're part of something bigger and they're actually getting access to portfolio companies. They're getting transparent reporting and even a deep breakdown frequently on what we're seeing in the markets and all that type of stuff. We write a monthly update every month. It goes out end of the month, never missed one, never late, and it's incredibly robust. It's incredibly detailed. What we feel like we owe to our GTM leader LPs is an education on investing and what we're seeing in the markets beyond just kind of what we're doing and how we're supporting our portfolio companies. We want to be in great companies. We have a strategy there. We have a deal sourcing strategy. We have a portfolio company supporting strategy. We have LP engagement. We have 6 dinners a year and a AGM we do that our GTM leader LPs come to. So, there's so many different ways that we provide value for kind of each part of the flywheel, whether it's our GTM leader LPs, our institutional LPs, our portfolio companies, or even candidates that come inbound to us looking to work for our portfolio companies, or even just folks that are listening to our podcasts or subscribers to our newsletter or engaging in some level with the brand.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's talk a little bit more about something you just said too. So I'm curious, when you're actually sourcing deals, what are some trends and commonalities that you're finding across the best companies that you're investing in? What are you looking for?
First and foremost, exceptional founders, humans, And honestly, like sometimes I look at these people and I'm like, you're not human. I mean, Manny was a machine. Manny is an absolute machine. I think you need that in order to be the best of the best. You need to be cranking all the time. You need to be singular minded. This is the only thing I think about all day, every day, basically. And I think that's definitely a commonality between folks. I think, market is extremely important as well. Great, exceptional founders, even if they're not in great markets, will pivot, and they'll figure that out. You use the surfing analogy where you can have a great surfer and a great board, which is like founder and product. But if you don't have a wave, you can't go anywhere. And for us, it's like we want to invest in spaces that have tailwinds, where even if we don't have um, the right founder, or even if it takes them a little while, or they mess up on something, the space just pulls you forward no matter what. And so there's a lot of research and work that goes into that. There are some spaces we have a prepared mind on where we want to make an investment. And there are other times where we'll speak to an exceptional entrepreneur and they'll turn us on to, highlights around why the space is so interesting right now. We had an example of this. We invested in a company called Abio, exceptional founders, experience in space, etc. And the why now was uncovered in a bill that had been passed recently, where the government had given $500 billion to municipalities
Interesting.
to enhance road safety. So that's something like we might not have come across and had a prepared mind about, but once we were enlightened by the founder, we were able to go verify it and do further diligence on that. And that company's crushing. We made that investment, and we were, I think, the first check or one of the first checks in it. So, feel really good about that.
That's awesome. And I'm sure honestly, when you do write a check for these companies, you have some pretty intense beliefs and principles that you've seen work over and over and over again. I mean, you talked about content from the beginning, events, community, the webinars, all kinds of different stuff that you're doing. But right now, I'm assuming you have some pretty strong beliefs about what's working in GTM and what's not. And I'm really curious to get your take on this, because us as a GTM agency have very strong opinions on this as well and what we're seeing work. So I'm curious to get your take there. What kind of GTM tactics, principles, and things are you seeing work across your portfolio companies that you're extremely bullish on for the next, call it, 3 years?
Yeah. So we incubated a company called Operator, which you had been talking to Mark for a little bit on, and now we have Nick, another outreacher, running. And I do think there's something there
Yep.
around, flipping how we thought about sales based on what's available to us in the AI era. So, like in the past, you would uh, you'd talk to a couple of your friends, build out a hypothesis about what to build, do some customer development, build something, and then you would again have another hypothesis where it's like, okay, cool, like based on the first 10 customers, here's what the next 10 customers could look like. And then based on the first 20 customers, here's what the next 100 customers could look like. And then you go and build out an ICP list based on the people that are currently using your product. And then you go build out messaging based on what that ICP potentially cares about. And then, you go and send those messages and iterate as you go. And, now with AI, our kind of like eye-opening moment was, Mark Costaglow was the SVP of sales at Outreach, one of the first and biggest sales engagement platforms. We had the best sales development team. And if we didn't, like, you'd kind of know, because we were the sales engagement. Like, we had 6,000 customers, and it wasn't just a product. Like, we actually consulted for these companies once we sold them Outreach. We were like, oh, and here's how you use it, and here's how you get great results. So, like, if we weren't good at what we did, our customers wouldn't be better at what they did, and they would all churn. So Mark realized that, technically, the research you can get today from using AI could write better emails, if you can figure it out, than he ever could. And his winning formula was that, like, he was a person. People buy from people. And, he knew how to write an email that could resonate. But what you couldn't get in the past that you can get now is you can, like, index every inch of the web in seconds with AI. So if you wanted some key piece of information to reach out to a CEO in the past, you might have to get to like page 10 of Google or to like some deep blog post somewhere in the depths of the web or to some tweet from 2016. And if you had that message, you'd instantly be able to get access to that person. Because you don't have that message, you can't. Or you just need to iterate a million different times. With AI now, you can get access to that key kernel, right? And you can actually use the value prop for your business as your prompt. So you can start to understand like, okay, well, here's the problem that I solve. Go show me all of the companies that have ever mentioned that they have this problem. And you can build a lead list based off of that and messaging based off of that. I think we're going to see a lot more of, instead of working off of our hypotheses that we have for each level of kind of creating your ICP, creating messaging, etc., almost flipping that, where it's like, let's just take our value prop and have that inform our messaging and have that inform our ICP, and going backwards as the AI and the research that we're able to do and get becomes better and better and better. The goal of Operator was always figure out like what was the user interface for that, and then how do we create that research that ladders down to everything else. And I think like that's where AI is super interesting, where like if you can, right now they're doing like the Waymos are using LiDAR, but the Teslas are going to use AI. And the Waymos cost like $180,000 and the Teslas cost like 35. And so like if Tesla can figure that out, they win, right? Like they win so much of the market because it is so much cheaper. Waymo can't compete until they also do it the way that Tesla's doing it. And I think it's similar in this space where it's like, if you can figure that out, you will win. And if you're not using that process or that product, you're just you're spending cycles, you're over hiring, you're missing out on so much that it doesn't make any sense for you to do, right? Like it's almost like the only product that matters. So trying to figure that out is first and foremost. Other than that, I think like modern data platforms like Clay and some of the new stuff that ZoomInfo is building is imperative to have in your stack. I think other products that were mission critical in the past might be more commoditized these days. I mean, you're just seeing a ton of competition in the email sending space, and there's something for everyone. I do think there's a market in the enterprise, which is what Outreach has always chased, where like there's governance, there's security, there's data privacy, all that type of stuff. But for startups and SMBs, it's been heavily commoditized.
So I'm curious to get your take on content too. So how important is that for the founders that you're investing in? Because I mean, I'll just be completely blunt and transparent about it. Ali and I run a ton of cold emails, a ton of cold LinkedIn messages, a ton of paid ads across LinkedIn, Google, Reddit, Meta, and we're doing all kinds of different things for our clients and we're getting great results for them. But at the end of the day, content is the number one source of growth for our business in particular. Like we do outbound for ourselves, we do paid ads for ourselves, we do all the things that we do for our clients. And frankly, we test everything on ourselves before we ever launch it to the public. But content has been an absolute machine for us. So in terms of growth and growth potential, how much are you looking for charisma in founders beyond just that linear focus, beyond just the great business idea with that tailwind that you're talking about in a space that has a lot of movement? How much does charisma and content play into that?
Yeah, those are great. I think like it all goes back to this person being singularly focused and being like an actual machine for the business, where they're just thinking about it, they want to produce content about it, they want to hear from people, they want comments, they want to be out there talking about it. So I don't, charisma matters, great. Yeah, sure. There's they call it like the Riz and the Tiz, and the spectrum like that. So like there's Riz founders who are just like charismatic and like suave and all that kind of stuff, and there's like the Tiz founders like Zuckerberg who are just like robot geniuses. Um, I don't have like a one or the other wins. I think they're both great, and you just want to find people obviously on the extremes. That's what this is, right? Like you want to find the outliers. That's how investing wins and works. I do think, taste is important. Like they have like the hacker, hustler, hipster is like a thing they always talk about in like founding teams, where it's like the hacker is the engineer who's just like shipping. The hustler is the salesperson, and the charismatic person is like face of the business type stuff. And the hipster is the one who um, has the taste. And I think that Outreach nailed that. They're a perfect example of that. Like Manny was the hustler, Inzer was the hipster, design, elements, everything was just like, here's how we're going to do this, pay like, crazy attention to detail and those types of things. And then Gordon and Wes were the hackers, and they built, the product. And you see that often. It doesn't have to be three people. It could be four, it could be two, it could be, one that embodies all of it, but you kind of have to have, you can't buy good taste. And you see that with like rich people too. It's like they make all this money, they don't know what to buy, they copy everybody else. Or like their taste is gaudy and disgusting, and they just get name
Yep.
brands, and it's like, are you kidding? Like you got the big H belt with the the whatever on the shoes with the gold things, and it's like you don't look good. You just spent a bunch of money on stuff that was expensive, and the person at Saks fleeced you. But like you don't like there's no cohesiveness. You don't look good. You have no taste. You have like there's no original thought in here for what you're trying to do there. I think that's important to have in life and in business.
I couldn't agree more. And I think an easy way to get around the style piece is you just wear black t-shirts every day. That always works too. No one can criticize you.
Yeah. Have you,
All right. I do have a
was the same
couple really important
Zuck?
questions
Zuck
for you.
wear the same shirt every day. That like Zuck was like gray tee, Jobs was like black
Yeah.
turtleneck. Something to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I have I think 7 t-shirts total. They're all the exact same shirt, just different colors, but they're the same shirt.
What brand? What
There's no
brand do you?
logos on it, nothing. It's just easy. Just throw that.
What brand? What brand do
Robert
you for your shirt?
Barracat, Nordstrom.
Oh, me too. Okay, so I do the Barracat V.
Yeah. See, there you go. This is a Barracat tee right here. They're the most
Yeah,
comfy. 100%
I
cotton.
do the
You
I
just
do the
can't,
T
if
the
you put them in the dryer at all though.
I do the T the crew if I have a like
Yeah.
one of these on over it or like a shirt on over it, and then I do the V if I don't. But Bearcat makes the best tees, and they got some good Henleys too. I think Vince and Bearcat are like the only two shirt brands that fit me well.
You're speaking my language. That's the only thing I have is Vince. It's Robert Barracat.
I have one brand of jeans. They're all
Yeah.
Page, and then Vince and Bearcat. Like that's my wardrobe, and then everything else is like Lulu. And although I am getting on the organic cottons trend now, so like packed, um, a lot of packed stuff. Working on. I'm not a big Flaherty guy, not a big like marine layer guy, but maybe I need to. I'm a California kid. I need to adopt it. Yeah, I don't know. The New Yorker in me is like could get there.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah. I mean, Flaherty's comfortable. They make comfortable stuff. So I don't know.
Yes,
But yeah, I stick with the basics. I stick with what I know and I just don't deviate from it.
good call. That's me too.
Yeah. Yeah. So two really important questions for you. I would say these are more important than anything we've talked about. But this one is really cool for you in particular because you've done a lot at a very young age. Like you are crushing it for anybody in life, but especially considering how old you are, I think you're really, really crushing it. But maybe this isn't a 10 years from now. Maybe it's a 30 years from now question. But 30 years from now, I'd love to know what's one sentence that defines the legacy and that you, as Max Altschuler, have left on the world. It could be about
Yeah,
family. It could be about business. It could be about anything.
I think from a business standpoint, um, it was important to me to make a lot of money as early as possible in my career because I've always optimized for like really peace and freedom, and money unlocked a lot of that for me. And so, I think I get to spend a decent amount of time with my kids and my wife and my dogs and in nature and eat really healthy and organic and all that type of stuff, and money's enabled that. But I think in my career also, um, I think if I died tomorrow, there would be a lot of people that said like I the things that I've created helped them in some way, shape, or form. And I think more specifically helped them make money so that they had freedom and opportunities and things like that. And if I helped somebody because I wrote a blog post and they used a tactic to do X, Y, and Z, or I connected them to this person and that person helped them get a job, or this, that, and the other thing. I think there's probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people that I've helped in one of those ways, and some more intimately than others. But I think that's pretty awesome. That's pretty special for me, and uh, whether people acknowledge that in their day to day, or just look back on it one day and be like, hey, I got this really awesome connection or this really awesome job I found through Sales Hacker or found through Outreach or through Max or whatever. Like, I think that would be meaningful to me.
Fair enough. Fair enough. And I know you're a big family guy too. So yeah, having money early, it definitely allows you to be there for those core moments as your kids are growing up. I think that's super important. I'm 100% with you on that. I
We're in
know
an
Ali feels the
Airbnb.
same way. It's something we both optimize for.
Yeah, we're in an Airbnb on the beach right now, and it's one of those nice things where uh, looking at the ocean and kids playing on the beach, and I can go down and join them when I'm not on calls. Like, that's the best, and it's just a random Monday. And my what I wanted and the way I work is different than most people. Like, I don't want to be under fluorescent lights. I want to be able to like be out meeting people, all that type of stuff. Um, I want to be able to work kind of my hours where like I'm always having dinner with my kids. But then like for me personally, I love what I do. I'm on at night after the kids go to sleep, and I'll have a game on in the background, but I'll log another 2 or 3 hours, from 7:30 or 8 o'clock on, and that's just kind of how I like to do it. In the morning, I'm up with the kids. I'm cooking breakfast. I'm hanging out with them, and if I have stuff to get to, I'll get to it on those days, but it's not every day. And then I'm cranking during the day, and then maybe at some point in the middle of the day, I'll be able to get a workout in or be able to go outside and take walk and talks. Like, I do a lot less Zooms, and in my line of work, that's fine. I love that. I can talk to our LPs. I can talk to founders. I can talk to whoever. I try to do as many phone calls as possible instead of Zoom, so I can walk on a hiking trail while I talk. And for me, that like helps me get the energy out. It helps me get the ideas flowing. Sitting in front of a computer like this it's harder to do. Anyway, I gotta go. I'm late to a team call, but
Fair enough.
good stuff.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thanks for coming on, man. This has been awesome. Honestly, I'd love to do a round two with you at some point, and we'll get around to it. And
excellent. Let's do it. I'll keep you posted.
all right,
All
man.
right. Thanks, guys. See ya.